Well, Pixar's newest film is still out in theaters, and it's killing it. It's even dethroned Captain America Civil War as the top domestic hit of the summer, which really just means that Disney is dominating the film industry to an even greater extent this year. But regardless, this reminded me of how much Pixar releases are events for me. I, as many people my age did, grew up on Pixar movies and grew to love them, not just for their excellent technical qualities, but mainly for the classic characters and stories they created. To me, Pixar exemplifies the term family film, which often gets confused for kids' film, but as Pixar showed, a movie can appeal to children and adults in equal measure, giving their films artistic merit beyond their technical craft. Today, I'm honoring the pioneers of this medium by counting down their films from my least favorite to favorite, and in order to not make this video half an hour long, I'm just going to give a summary of my feelings instead of a mini review for each film. Also, I haven't seen The Good Dinosaur, and I don't really want to, so if The Good Dinosaur is your favorite Pixar movie for some reason, I apologize in advance for not having it on my list. Well, with that out of the way, let's get started.
Tomater, average intelligence.
Yeah, I know, it's an easy target, but it really does stand out as the black sheep of Pixar's filmography. Yeah, it's colorful and mildly entertaining, but that merely brings it up to mediocre kids' film status. The reason this movie is so maligned isn't that the story is terrible and the characters fall flat, as we'll see later, Pixar has done this before, but that it essentially had no ambition beyond keeping toddlers quiet for an hour and a half and furthering their merchandising arm. Let's face it, Cars was a marketing scheme from the very beginning, and this is the clearest example of that. Let's just hope that Cars 3 is at least tolerable.
Faster than fast, quicker than quick. I am lightning.
As I said, Cars was a terrible idea to begin with. Honestly, even though the sequel has less artistic merit, I dislike this one even more. While Cars 2 at least had some fun action scenes, this one is just drab and meaningless. All the characters are boring in one note, the story is tired and predictable, and again, the idea is just ridiculous. How do cars reproduce? Are cars born or are they created? Do the child cars just stay children forever? Are they organic? If they don't reproduce, who makes them? Where are the other humans? Are there even any humans? I don't know. At least in Toy Story, the toys have some thematic relation to the human characters, but in this one, they just don't.
James B. Sullivan.
I'm gonna be a scarer!
And here's another continuation of a story that nobody asked for. Who cares about Mike and Sully's college life? Who the hell came up with this idea? I mean, if you were going to continue this story, at least do a sequel. There's at least some potential there. This movie added literally nothing to the first film, and if it weren't for our attachment to these characters from the first film, this would have been panned far more than it was. The only good thing I can say about it is that the ending did surprise me. I won't spoil it, but it does introduce themes that I haven't really seen in kids' movies that often. And while that is interesting, the rest of the movie doesn't back it up.
If you had the chance to change your fate, would you?
I do give Brave a bit of credit for at least attempting to introduce new ideas in one of their films, which, while putting it above the previous films, still doesn't make it that good. Some beautiful imagery and creative ideas are wasted on this weird combination of The Little Mermaid and Brother Bear in Scotland. There are a lot of opportunities to build a mythology with lore and magic, but they're cast aside for story and character tropes that we've seen a million times. The comic relief is distracting rather than relieving, and while the themes of family and compromise are explored somewhat, it's done in this really bizarre story that doesn't really engage you at all. I'm glad I saw it once, but I don't think I could bear to see it again.
No! Hurry, no! Don't look at the light!
I can't help it.
Okay, now we're at the point where Pixar movies start to get good. While it's not that original of a story and the characters are somewhat familiar, it's at least fun and witty. The circus bugs are a ton of fun to be with, each with unique personalities and quirks that makes this worth revisiting more than the previously mentioned films. The one downside is that trying to animate organic life forms as the main characters has aged it more than Toy Story's plastic ones. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about this one. It's good, but not really that memorable.
Did you hear that?
What was that? Hear what?
Stan, I heard someone say hello.
I'm glad to see this movie doing well enough to help Pixar recover some of the losses from The Good Dinosaur, and it certainly deserves to be doing well. While it could have gone down the Monsters University route of a completely unnecessary continuation of a classic story, it does add depth to a character that I honestly didn't like that much from the first one. While I really didn't like the first 10 or 15 minutes and how it just seemed to be loaded with bad memory jokes and little else, the rest of the movie is fun and witty. I love the dynamic between Dory and Hank, And while the arcs that the characters go through aren't completely revolutionary or original, they work really well. There are also a few scenes near the end that were particularly well done, specifically the panic attack and truck scenes. Don't know what I'm talking about? Go see it while it's in theaters. It's worth it.
Go get him, Mr. Sullivan! Quiet! You're making him lose his focus!
While not the deepest or most emotionally resonant Pixar film, Monsters, Inc. is still an entertaining ride. It's a fun idea, and the film has the wit and imagination to develop it thoroughly. The cast is fantastic. John Goodman provides a suitably large yet lovable voice for Sully. Billy Crystal is memorable and funny as Mike. Steve Buscemi is menacing as Randall. And Bob Peterson is so good as Roz. To me, this is the best of the good but not great Pixar movies. Although it's funny and has an entertaining climax, the story is pretty weak. At first, it's a decent message about being open-minded and accepting of others unlike yourself, but the third act evolves into this out-of-place corporate scheme that took me out of the fun. Again, it's good, but there are just some elements that drag it down for me. Just to get it out of the way, yes, the opening of this film is incredible. I know this is the first thing that everyone brings up about this movie, but damn is it great. The music is perfect, and the way that they can set up the motivation for the main character is unbelievable. However, I feel this is where most of the discussion for the film ends, which isn't to say it's bad, because it's not. Past the opening, it's still a fun and heartwarming adventure with plenty of charming characters. Some people say that the dogs put them out of the experience, but I honestly thought that they were really funny and added necessary levity to an otherwise depressing story about letting go of your past. Carl starts out as a grumpy old recluse, but learns to move on from his tragic past and care about someone again. Not romantically, albeit, but he cares nonetheless. I really enjoy Up, and while it is low on the list, I see that as a testament to how good the other movies on this list are, as opposed to a criticism of this one.
Don't you get it? We're finished. Obsolete. Over the hill.
I hate how this movie has essentially become Pixar's sacred cow, because it seems that nobody will admit to any legitimate problems with it. The story is essentially a carbon copy of Toy Story 2's, and it's surprisingly humorless outside of a few scenes. I found the secondary toys' lack of trust towards Woody completely inexplicable. Every time they mistrusted him in the past, he was always right and they would come around to his point of view. But it seems like they learned nothing from the previous two movies. Also, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I did not like the ending at all. I'm sorry, but it's just way too corny and off-putting to be effective. With all that said, you would think I really don't like this movie, but I do. It's still a strong movie. It has all the characters I grew up with being those characters. It is funny when it tries to be. And when it tries to be dramatic, it mostly succeeds. The incinerator scene, while I didn't think would end badly at all for the characters, was well made and suitably tense. The escape from the daycare was a tense scene and had me entertained throughout the entirety of it. While it's nowhere near perfect, it's still a satisfying ending to a series of films that I love. And for what it's worth, that's good enough for me.
Don't look at me like that! You're the one who was getting fancy with the spices!
And following Pixar's most overrated movie is possibly the most underrated one. Not to say that people dislike it, but not a lot of people give this movie that much credit compared to the other Pixar movies. Even though in my opinion, it's pretty much on par with them. While this can be said for pretty much every Pixar movie, it applies almost more so here. This film is gorgeous. The motion is fluid, the character designs are very well done, and the backgrounds are absolutely immaculate. This is the movie that made me want to visit Paris. The lush skies, the beautiful colors, it just looks so good. It also sounds great. The music by Michael Giacchino perfectly encapsulates the wonder and beauty of France. It's also well written with tons of likable characters, especially the secondary ones. Remy and Linguini are good, to be sure, but the side chefs all have these really interesting quirks that I honestly wanted to see more of. And the critic may be one of Pixar's best designed characters, with an imposing figure and a pompous yet intimidating voice. The one element that isn't that great is the overall story. It's fine, but it's not that interesting compared to everything else in the movie. There are a lot of side stories that either get too much focus or not enough, and the main plot is a fairly standard don't judge a book by its cover story. Is it bad? Not at all. It's just that it isn't that great compared to the other great aspects that this movie has to offer. Give it another watch. It deserves more love than it gets.
Duck! That's not a duck, it's a pelican!
I consider this to be Pixar's first technical marvel. It looks and sounds absolutely fantastic, completely immersing you in the vast ocean landscapes and giving just the right tones at just the right moments. It's not the deepest movie they've done, nor the most complex, but it serves as a testament to how much control they have over simple emotions. Pretty much everything works in this movie. The voice acting is top-notch, it's funny, and while the story is fairly standard, It's driven by this incredible passion that's abundantly transparent throughout the picture. While it may be predictable, you do care for Marlon and want to see him find his son back. You feel invested. You feel scared for him when he's in danger. You see him develop into a greater father throughout the movie. The thematic elements of this film are quite well paced. The only element I don't particularly like is Dory, who, while not a bad character, can get on my nerves a bit too often, which was the main reason I was skeptical about her getting her own movie. She works, though, serving as comic relief for children, though it's not like this movie is lacking it, and a companion to Marlon who helps him learn to come out of his shell once in a while. It's just a great movie. For a while, I was one of those people who had this film at the lower end of their scale. I loved and still love the atmosphere and simplicity of the first act, developing the central relationship in a refreshingly endearing way. Past that, however, I found the movie to be a bit of a slog with few interesting characters, a straightforward story, and a hammered-in message that could have been handled with more subtlety. While I still feel that way to a degree, I feel that I didn't give Wall-E enough credit the first time around. While the second half isn't quite as strong as the first, it's still a lot of fun and can be really intense at times. The two main robots have fantastic chemistry that persists throughout the movie and is portrayed with an impressive lack of dialogue. While the message is a bit on the nose, I don't mind it as much now. It's a good message and it is delivered intelligently. Also, having now watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, I can appreciate the nods to that movie that definitely went over kids' heads, demonstrating just how much Pixar cares about catering to adults as well as children, which I think sums up the film fairly well. It's entertaining and well animated enough for kids to enjoy, even through the slower scenes, and the characters and commentary are intelligent enough for adults to enjoy. It's a really strong picture regardless of the faults I still find in it.
There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
The one that started it all. I've always loved this trilogy for its themes and characters, but what I now realize looking back is that this may be Pixar's funniest movie. It has a lot of heart to it and definitely establishes the existential elements the series would expand on later, but this film is just hilarious. It may be one of the best buddy movies ever made. Tom Hanks and Tim Allen are both phenomenal in their roles and work fantastically off each other, and they're given a great script to work with. There are just so many great scenes, from comedic banter to dramatic realizations to thrilling action. This film is really the whole package. For me, there's a big leap between the previous entries on this list and my top 4. When Pixar gets it right, they can make gold. Oh, and one final thing I should note is that this movie still looks great over 20 years later. Maybe not so much the people, but the toys and certain objects look really nice. What else can I say? It's just a classic.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
After the slump Pixar had with some unimpressive sequels and a mediocre princess movie, they demonstrated that they still have the magic touch. Anyone who knows me will likely be surprised by this choice, as ever since it came out, this was my favorite Pixar movie. It's funny and imaginative, but also drenched in symbolism and character. I love the synergy between the scenes inside and outside of Riley's head, and I love how fun and creative they get with how they portray certain aspects of the human mind. I think this may be Pixar's most adult movie with the possible exception of Up, which is interesting since they were both directed by the same person. It's really great, but looking back on it, I might have overpraised it a touch. While it's a fantastic family film with many smart elements and, fittingly enough, a great grasp on emotion, I don't quite see it as one of my all-time favorites like I used to. That's nothing against the film. Even being the third best of Pixar is better than a large portion of movies. But it is something to note.
Honey, where's my super suit?
Why do you need to know?
Pixar made what is, in my opinion, the best superhero movie ever made. Even on the micro level, they give each member of the superpowered family a strength that reflects their place in the family and society as a whole. The father figure having to be strong, the mother having to handle several things at once, the hyper young boy, the teenage shut-in, and the child that parents don't know how it will turn out. What also puts it above other superhero movies for me is that it isn't overly dark, but is still adult. It's not even mostly a standard superhero action film, having elements of spy movies and a central midlife crisis storyline. It's also hilarious. Frozen might be my favorite Pixar side character, and has one of the best action scores of all time. The jazzy big band sound perfectly fits the style of the picture, and it's just damn fun to listen to. Like Toy Story before it, this movie is the complete package. It looks and sounds amazing, it's entertaining, funny, and suspenseful, while also being smart and at times really adult. I mean, one of the first scenes in this movie is a freaking suicide attempt.
What are we gonna do, Buzz?
Use your head.
But I don't want to use my head!
Yep, I'm that guy that likes the second one more than the other two, but how can I not? It's as funny as the first, as dramatic as the third, but as I said before, the third one got its strengths mostly from this one. They take the series exactly where it should go. This film really dives into Woody's mind and explores his role as a toy. It's not just a great exploration of this concept, but it also represents how much these things mean to us as children, and even as we grow older. Our toys serve to make our lives and our lives alone more enjoyable. And however fleeting that may be, it is indispensable to one's development. Even putting that aside, it's still damn entertaining. Its script is just as tight as the first, and unlike the third one, it isn't just its predecessor again. The reason why this is my favorite Pixar movie is that it takes my favorite characters and takes their story to new heights of comedy and drama. Both of the previous two entries are equally as good in many ways, but Toy Story 2 has by far the best and most memorable cast of characters. I don't know if that explained anything, but it's what I feel. I love this movie, as well as most of the other movies on this list, but this one stands above them all. And that's been my first video, Top 16 Pixar Movies. If you like the video, be sure to give it a like. I mean, it only makes sense. Yeah. And if you want to see more from this channel, be sure to subscribe, as Micah and I will be giving you lots of game and movie content for weeks to come. I mean, if you don't like movies, you can watch him. If you don't like games, you can watch me, but we'll cross over a lot. So you get the best of both worlds. This is great. That's how democracy works, right? Yeah, be sure to watch all our other videos. They're pretty good.